Hello and welcome everyone to Are Your GTM Operations AI Ready? My name is Jim Bell. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at LeanData. And today's session is built on a study that we did along with the folks at LXA. So it's built on this B2B State of Martech and Revenue Operations report. And that did cover a pretty wide audience. So over 200 senior leaders across 7 different countries. These were predominantly sort of, kind of mid-market and enterprise level companies. So they all had at least 2,500 employees in them. So they were dealing with sort of the issues of running a scaled operation. And one thing that we found in, what I want to do first, before we jump into the survey, is to just quickly introduce and welcome our panel. So we have a great group of senior leaders here today, all of whom are dealing with different challenges at different organizations. So I think we're going to get a really good sense of what's going on in the market. And I think they'll be able to really add some color and shed some light on some of the results from the survey. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and we'll do this in order, but this is my little board of directors. So Kacee, let's start with you.
All right. Well, love that. Hi, I'm Kacee. I am the head of marketing operations at Drata. So Drata is the trust layer between great companies. So we are an AI trust management platform, and we help our customers automate governance, risk, compliance, and assurance. We are based in SF. The company is only 5 years old, but we've already grown over 9,000 customers across the globe and have 600 people who make that happen. I'll pass it off.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm Jessi White. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing Operations at Korn Ferry, and we're a global organizational consulting and executive search firm that helps organizations solve challenges across talent, workforce strategy, and performance. And from a marketing ops perspective, that means that we're supporting a really wide range of client journeys that span those business units, regions, and stakeholders. So it's my team's job to create the operational foundation that helps all of that work together.
Thanks, Jessi. Brooke.
Hi, everyone. I am Brooke Bartos. I lead the marketing operations team at Checkmarx. We are an agentic AppSec solution in the cybersecurity space, and we operate globally, though I am based here in the Chicago area. So shout out to everybody in Chicago.
Nice. Thank you very much. And I'm just going to encourage my fellow speakers here to just mute when you're not talking. We're definitely getting some buzzing on the line a little bit. So we'll do our best to try to manage kind of the quality of the sound for everybody. But thank you for those who are chiming in online to let us know that. All right. So getting back to the report. I'm going to go through kind of 4 themes that came out of it. And the first one is really around companies consolidating in size, but not in complexity. So as part of this study, we found that there were 37 tools in the average sort of Martech stack, down from 62 from the prior year. 51% named sort of integration complexity as their top barrier. So even though they have fewer tools, the integration is still one of the biggest challenges that people are facing. And that 21% are still running 50 or more tools in their RevOps stack. So given all that, I wanted to kind of hear from the group here a little bit, but that even though there's sort of a consolidation of tech stacks, that this idea of added complexity despite fewer tools and making it more difficult to connect, kind of how is that playing out? So maybe I'll start with you, Jessi. I know Korn Ferry runs a pretty complex kind of multi-layered GTM process across different regions and has a lot of kind of CRM logic that you use in that. So kind of what makes your environment difficult or not, and how do these results land with you?
Yeah, I think what makes our environment challenging isn't necessarily the number of systems or tools in our tech stack. It's really the number of relationships that we're managing. For us, a single client could interact with multiple Korn Ferry solutions over the course of their relationship with us, sometimes in parallel. So there's different teams involved, different ownership models that need to apply, and different regions that may participate in and out of the journey. But for us, our clients don't really think about those internal distinctions. They expect the same kind of seamless experience from the outside. So for us, what we've really learned is that we need to manage this at scale, and manual effort alone can't help us do that. So we've really focused on creating clarity and consistency across our different lines of business and regions, so that we can really have clear business rules that make decisions happen consistently, regardless of who is involved and when. For us, I don't really think complexity is something that you need to eliminate. You just need to be able to plan for it and design for it. So if your foundation is strong, you can kind of continue to grow without creating a snag every time a new variable is introduced, because it's inevitable.
Yes, I would definitely agree. Complexity is kind of unavoidable, especially with the constant innovation in technology and the changes in how we kind of do business and what's going on in the market. So, Brooke, maybe I'll turn it over to you. Let's hear about your kind of complexity and how that's changed over the years and how you sort of keep it at a manageable level.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jessi nailed it a little bit with the complexity is how you plan for it. I think any of us who have worked in marketing operations, whenever you're talking to a vendor, there's always the vendors that say, "Oh yeah, we can integrate with that." Everybody integrates with everything, right? But we also know that that's oftentimes not really the case, and that's where things like a Zapier or Workato really came into play. But I think for a lot of organizations, I know it was true in my previous org and even in my current org, things like data warehouses and orchestration platforms that let you really tap into that data and have a real source of truth, instead of this is a source of truth for this team and this is a source of truth for this team, and you never really know what is the real source of truth. Being able to bring those in a way that lets the teams action and activate on that information has really been, for us, the key in keeping that information manageable, and with it, the key to starting to unlock things with AI capabilities that before would have been kind of a choose your own adventure is a good way to think of it, by giving everybody that same resource to tap into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of an explosion of signals to deal with, and then an explosion of ways to act on it that makes it really tough. Kacee, I've had the good fortune of being able to present with Kacee out on the road and hear about how Drata has really kind of overhauled their process to become much more efficient and to handle the kind of growth that you've had. So I'd love to hear about how you are dealing with complexity.
Yeah, going back to the comment about like having a strong foundation, again, Drata is only 5 years old, and we've had to do a lot of building the plane and flying it too. So we actually have a really big focus on fixing that foundation right now. So for us, what adds complexity is we have no shortage of tools. I hope our CFO is not watching, but we've got a lot of data and integrations. And I think another thing that we're up against is time. So for example, we've got a lot of enrichment tools. We've had to build out a strategy around that, like what we're pulling from them, from where and when. And that doesn't happen overnight. And then the other part of it too, I think when we were setting up like our foundation of our systems, Salesforce namely, we weren't expecting to grow this fast. And so a lot of what we're doing now is kind of ripping off Band-Aids and finding the skeletons in the closet, and actually having to address them, which is more challenging than a lot of people would think. And so trying to figure out what's accurate, what's reliable, and what we can actually trust before we put it into an AI system or use it for analysis is a big focus. Kind of on the integrations piece, I would actually say, we're in the security and compliance space. So we can't integrate every tool that we have, even if it does integrate with everything. And so we have to find some workarounds to operationalize some of these systems, or have it take on like the mundane tasks like everybody's talking about, like creating Salesforce campaigns. I think the last piece of it, touching on time, the AI landscape is ever changing every day. You've got early adopters, you've got late adopters, et cetera. At Drata, we're very much early adopters. Again, we're building a plane and flying it too, but trying to develop that AI strategy while also keeping the broader organization focused with an understanding of the purpose can be a challenge in itself. So it just adds kind of that additional layer on top of your foundation. It's people process. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're kind of leading us into our next topic, right? That complexity, that need for process becomes really important. And so that was really the second finding, was this idea of an execution gap in the report. So execution is not keeping up, and the process is the thing that's not working, right? And so I feel like this is a lesson that we learn over and over and over again. A new tool comes out with new capabilities. It's like, okay, this is going to solve everything for us. And it's not enough. And with all the integration, et cetera, yeah, process is really important. So process was the lowest scoring maturity pillar in the report. It was also kind of the slowest advancing or the slowest growing. 37% of the respondents said they were unsure that every lead reached the right person in time, which, that is not something you want to tell your sales leaders. And then 26% said that enforcing SLAs on, lead routing, or in some cases in more mature organizations, opportunity routing, et cetera, that 17% are triaging by hand. And so they're not reinforcing the SLA. So it does really come down to process. So we'd love to hear from you. Maybe I'll go back to you, Kacee, on the process side, about kind of how you went from sort of routing that was kind of broken before and got that to be much more airtight.
Yeah. So for people who haven't heard the story, 2.5 years ago, we migrated to LeanData because our previous routing provider was consistently breaking. When we totaled it up, we were looking at over $2 million in pipeline that was missed. So that became a forcing function to migrate. But going back to the piece of process, fast forward to now, our story is much larger than just routing inbound leads or enforcing SLAs, which is where we started. LeanData has actually evolved with us, especially in this new world of AI. And it's really becoming the backbone of the orchestration layer that we're building with our AI systems. So for example, we built out an AI system for down market efficiency, and LeanData was getting the perfectly packaged account to the SDR team, and kind of iterating on that and building on it. We now actually have LeanData handling part of the human process and being that handoff between, compounded signals ready to go action and passing it off to Piper. We call her Jamie, so qualified agent, which has significantly increased speed to lead. But kind of leveling that up past the operations piece of that, it's really been about the full customer journey for us. And so LeanData has actually given us that structure to organize what that journey should look like, which obviously clears up what the process should be, R&R between the different teams. And so whether someone's like a new prospect or a customer, we can actually deliver like a consistent experience to them. And for us, that is just reliability and the orchestration or the process for us that really unlocks things. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much. Jessi, maybe to you. I know you guys had some really great improvements, particularly in speed to lead and kind of the scale you're running. Yeah, we'd love to hear more.
Yeah, by moving to LeanData, probably around a similar time as you, Kacee, about 2.5 years ago, we really drove down our speed to lead time from about 15 minutes to around 5 minutes. And we're doing a lot of transformation in those 5 minutes as well. The waterfall enrichment, normalization, all of the different rules that we have across business units and regions. And obviously the time savings is important because we all know that the faster that a lead is followed up on, the better the conversion rate. But I think for us, what it really did was improved the confidence that our sales partners have in the leads that marketing has delivered. I think historically there was a notion that, the leads that marketing is giving us. They're not of high quality. Like, we've got too many other things to do, like pushing it aside. But delivering that in a quick and consistent manner really helped to drive impact on the confidence that the sales team was having. And we saw better outcomes, better SLA adherence, and really just kind of gave us some trust in the process with that team.
Fantastic. Yeah, it is kind of the measure, I think, for all of us, is that level of trust from the sales organization. Because ultimately, it's very difficult to be successful in marketing, right? If sales is not successful, and that partnership is so critical. So thank you. Brooke, so on the Checkmarx sides, I know that you guys have done work in around the handoffs, both for new business and for post-sale handoffs. And wanting to understand a little bit about kind of how you manage that and how process comes into play.
Yeah. So our organization, we have multiple product lines. So we do have our new business team, but we also do a lot of cross-sell, upsell. And within that, we sort of similarly were in the boat where prior to bringing on LeanData, there was a lot of manual handoffs. Somebody was responsible for looking at every new hand raiser that came in and saying, okay, you go here and you go here. But the response time was the consequence of that. Sure, we knew people were going where they should, but it wasn't fast. And by being able to have in place the logic of who goes where and when and who's responsible, and having clear lines of ownership, also helps us have the clarity around exactly that. SLAs. Are people getting followed up on? What's getting missed? Is somebody on vacation and something is sitting too long? Nobody wants to be the lead that reached out to an organization, filled out a form, and then doesn't hear anything for 2 weeks. Guess what? There's 3 vendors in front of you that already reached out within a few hours, a few days, that are now 2 weeks ahead of you in the process. You lost that deal before that conversation ever happened. And so being able to stay on top of that and see where things are falling down. And if somebody says, hey, I think there's an issue, having that clear transparency and saying, oh, actually, this went here because of this. Lets us know, do we have the right things in place? Do we have the right team members? Are we actioning things fast enough? Or are there gaps in the process that we need to go back and either retrain, change, modify, to make sure that that speed to lead process and those SLA enforcements are making sure that we are getting in front of those people when they're interested and before our competitors do?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear so many stories about just where that trust can get broken when someone asks, why did this get routed to this person, right? And if they don't get a good answer, there's kind of a lost trust, right, in the whole system. And that's just really foundational to people, like, believing that the leads are valuable, knowing that they're getting there quickly, getting to the right person. It just sort of underlies that whole sales and marketing integration. So yeah, I think that's a really great point. And we've certainly seen this kind of across our customer base. I've had to, again, been able to kind of present with different customers at different conferences over the last few months. And people are in different starting places, but this is really helping them a lot. So with Rockwell Automation, I think they were at sort of 10% of leads were getting matched correctly, and they moved up north of 85%. At Uber for Business, they were at like 10% of their MQLs were not getting assigned or assigned correctly. So they got that down to under 1%. So 99% plus were getting their SLA compliance went from 40% to 85%. And they had great results after that in terms of deal velocity and all the kind of the throughput metrics to that we as operations people, marketing ops, rev ops, we need to tell our story in terms of productivity, et cetera, in revenue terms, right? That's when it gets, it hits home, right? In terms of the importance for the business, and also reinforces the importance of the trust, right? That this process is there, that we're handling the complexity, and that we're driving speed and productivity into the process. All right, let's move on to our next topic. So theme number 3 is about AI. Not shocking at this point that any report would definitely spend some time on AI. And I hear this in all the conversations I have with our customers and people in the industry. Pretty much everyone is under some form of mandate, or they're driving themselves to to transform with AI, right? So the AI conviction is near universal, but deployment, people are at very different stages of where they are in rolling out AI. And I would say, I'm for the most part, I'm not talking about kind of AI, content creation and AI assistance internally or AI doing analytics. I think people are pretty far along in those areas. But when it comes to the higher stakes and more complex implementations of AI in terms of collaboration, in terms of customer-facing things, that's where people are at very different stages of deployment. So 78% are sort of call AI agents as part of their process, and it's a very transformative part of their go-to-market technology. 17% are embedding AI across different areas, but just 2% call it central to their process and their deployment of their go-to-market at this point. And 46% are kind of leading with that kind of those easier, earlier kind of use cases around AI for content creation. And this is where I think the concept of trust and what we just talked about in terms of the execution gap and the importance of having the right data, having a rigorous process becomes even more important where something becomes autonomous, right? And so being able to trust that to run these different processes definitely becomes a little scarier when we turn them over to AI. So with that, with this sort of, conviction around AI, maybe I'll go back to you, Kacee. Sort of, you just admitted you guys are pretty forward on this stuff, and I'm getting on a plane on Thursday, and twice you mentioned building it while you're flying it, so I'm getting a little jittery. But tell us more.
So well, luckily for you, I'm not building your plane.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, transparently, like thinking about the world of AI and how forward we are, it all kind of feels like experimentation and iteration these days. We've launched quite a few things, but it's not like we've launched something and it's been, 100% the best thing ever. So lots of iteration happening, but the way that I kind of think through how we draw a hard line in the sand would be more of like a risk assessment lens. So to your point, like people are doing content generation, they're doing research and prospecting, maybe some campaign level AI SDR plays that we've talked about in the past. Those are experiments that we're really comfortable running broadly because the cost of we'll call it bad output is low. So we can take some more risk there. But when we start to scale and incorporate like our AI SDRs and these broader AI systems like we're doing now, it inherently brings on more risk. So it also forces, much larger conversations with like SDR leadership that go well beyond just like the technology itself. So like if an AI SDR is handling some of the middle of funnel outreach that we have, what is now a human SDR, accountable for? And do we think that there should be like an AI SDR quota for the humans to be accountable for that? Or how do we kind of help the team see this as leverage rather than like a threat? And so, because that's a very real thing. People are getting nervous about that. So we want to address that and help them kind of lean into it. And so as we're launching these larger AI systems with the AI SDRs, those organizational and cultural questions have to happen and be a conversation. And they're just as large as the operational ones. And so that's something that we are working through right now. And hopefully we'll start to see some more success from that.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Brooke, let me send it over to you next. And I'd love to hear about kind of, again, since you've got that great sort of full revenue lifecycle motion, kind of where are you picking to apply AI and how do you kind of do that? And where are you trying to keep humans in the loop in that process?
Yeah, so a lot of our AI so far has been focused on both the sales and marketing side. In our organization, SDRs actually sit within the marketing organization, not the sales side. So we're very, very close to that hands-on or handoff process because we are one team. And that has been really a great opportunity for us to lean into AI, both in terms of emails for account research, looking at what does an account do, what is their line of business, who are we talking to at the account, what have they done, and building that out. The account research is a big piece of it. We also have Piper, So similarly, we are leaning into some areas where we can augment the SDRs with an AI partner to help do some of that pre-qualification. And that way, when an individual gets handed over to an SDR, they're truly ready. They're a qualified lead, ready to have a conversation. And the SDR is able to take away some of that time that maybe early pre-qualification or basic question answering that would come with a scored MQL, but that wasn't ready to buy. So those are some of the areas that we're really starting to lean into the AI portion, along with some of our analytics, helping to be able to do some analysis of where things may be breaking and falling down or where teams can do better, so that we're applying resources in the right place for the teams to be most effective.
Yeah, absolutely. It is becoming more and more of almost an integrated workforce, right, between the humans and the AI agents. And I definitely heard people talking more recently about, AI having a quota, like who is the AI supervisor, right? These are all, it's really changing kind of how we think about the work that's getting done. So absolutely.
Yeah, we've talked about actually giving our AI SDR a similar KPI set to what our human SDRs have, and seeing what our standards are, but where it has goals and KPIs just like other areas of the team.
Yeah.
I'll add to that, Brooke. I think like the people who are asking those questions, it almost feels like when the AI shift started to happen that everybody was like, oh, it's going to come take all of our jobs. But the people who are asking those questions are like actually leaning into it, and they have a different framework of like, how do we actually scale the business and then leverage our people for the most important touch points with our customers?
Yep, exactly that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just such a similar model in all those ways, as well as, an AI SDR is getting paid basically in credits rather than in a salary. And so like it's still going to cost something, right? And at some point, those credits are probably going to become more expensive. And so like the question is, are we doing this in a way that's, efficient, and how do we measure it? Cool. With that, maybe I would love to get your take, Jessi, sort of at that kind of enterprise scale that you all have, kind of when do you decide something's ready, right, to be in a kind of a mission critical process from an AI perspective?
Yeah. Not to harp on the trust piece, but I really think that's key to it. For us, we really, as we get closer to the revenue and the client experience, we're really thoughtful about where the risk is in that AI usage. For us, we're really just concerned about making sure we have the right governance and visibility and control, because ultimately, I mean, we all get the question of why did this happen? And when it comes to lead routing, that comes to me. So I want to make sure that I've got the visibility into why these decisions are being made. But with that being said, we do have some really positive examples of AI creating value for us today. We did a lot of pressure testing and monitoring and tweaking and refinement, and we've introduced an equivalent to Piper. We use 6 Sense AI email for AI-enabled follow-up on both leads that are past SLA that somehow slipped through the cracks despite our perfect routing assignment. Things happen. But our AI SDR was able to re-engage those leads that were not followed up on, and we've generated a lot of what would have been lost pipeline from that. And so we're looking to expand those use cases. Another area where we've transitioned human resources in different directions that can be more impactful. Korn Ferry doesn't have a traditional SDR function. We had a lead management team that was kind of sitting in between the marketing team delivering the leads and sitting between the business that works the leads and making sure that anything that goes to the business is actually of commercial value, because we are a B2B and a B2C company. And so we regularly get hundreds, if not thousands, of form fills on our main contact us form with people looking for a job, looking for career coaching, pitching themselves to us for an open role that they see that we're recruiting for. And so we are piloting the AI inference node with LeanData to see if that can really help us determine what is commercial and non-commercial requests based on some very broad open text fields before we deliver those leads to the business. So that's something we're really excited about. And it's been encouraging to start, and we're looking forward to the feedback that we get from the business, because we know they will have lots.
As always. Well, it's a good sign, right? That means they're using it, they're seeing value, hopefully, and giving you feedback. But and for those of you who aren't familiar, the concept of an AI inference node is when you think about a deterministic flow that you want to happen, a set of rules, for example, like lead routing or something like that. This ability that LeanData provides is to sort of plug a node into that graph or that flow chart to say, okay, go call out to bring your own LLM, and say, for example, somebody's filled out this text box, and infer from that using a probabilistic mechanism, using AI, is this a job seeker? Is this a customer support case? Or is this legitimately a new potential customer? And then act on that, send that back into the deterministic system, in other words, the graph or the flow chart, to make sure the right thing happens from there on out. And so in the same way, there's sort of integration of humans and AI, there's this integration of sort of the rule-based model that sort of has to be there in terms of driving the revenue process. And this is why Anthropic, OpenAI, all these companies like use LeanData as part of their tech stack, is because that stuff has to work. The revenue engine depends on it. There's a ton of complexity in there that if you're doing round robins and you're segmenting your market in different ways, and you want all these different things to happen within the flow of that revenue plan that you set up at the beginning of the year, you need all those things to happen the way you said they would. That stuff has to work as designed. It has to be observable. It can't be a black box, as you had mentioned. And then, of course, the governance part of that as well. So it's a super important balance, I think, that we're all starting to deal with, is like, where do we bring in the probabilistic piece of it along? And then how does that fit into the rules-based piece to make sure that some of that stuff absolutely works as designed every time and handles that complexity. Going back to sort of the humans and AI integration piece, it reminds me of a session, again, we did with Uber, where they're using it for customer onboarding. So the AI agent is for Uber for businesses, bringing people on board, helping them get signed up, maybe dealing with getting their credit card set up. And when the AI agent runs into a problem or it can't solve, it then not only figures out what onboarding specialist to route the person to, but surfaces their calendar to the person in the agent, right? So that person can have this nice seamless process of moving from the agent to a scheduled meeting with an onboarding specialist to get their issue resolved, and then they can get handed back to the agent. So figuring out how AI fits in that broader flow, I think, is a really important question. All right, let's move on to our fourth topic coming out of the report, which is around the sort of that governance piece. So in the study, 50% of people felt confident that they can sort of govern AI safely at scale. Actually, a bit higher than I thought, just given some of the stories you hear and all that. 82% agreed that the foundations must come before scaling AI. This seems pretty straightforward. And then 42% cite poor data quality as a barrier to ops maturity. So would love to sort of dig into that a bit more. This is an example of, I heard a great quote, I think it was at the Gartner conference, where with AI, it's not just a question of like, if the data is not good, it's not just a question of garbage in, garbage out. It's a question of like garbage in, highly confident garbage out that can actually like poison your go-to-market process. So the fact that like what comes out of it thinks it's good, it thinks it knows what it's doing, right? And then spreads itself throughout your process, I think, is a bit of a cautionary tale. So I'm glad to hear that people are, reasonably confident that they can do this. But I think that, data quality is definitely an important issue on that. So with that, let me start with Brooke this time. So kind of you operate within a company that's, requires security, right? So kind of how do you think about governance, since it's already sort of in your company DNA?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the garbage in, garbage out, and I think we've all heard that till we're blue in the face, but AI is kind of like throwing a can of gasoline in the dumpster fire if you're not careful. And I think we've all heard the horror stories of teams that have accidentally deleted their entire CRMs by AI by mistake. Nobody wants to be that team. And so for us within our organization, so I'm in the marketing operations team. We also have a business applications team and a revenue operations team. And the three teams work very closely together because all the work we do is so very interdependent. But as a result, it means anything that is done by one team has the potential, of course, to impact the rest of the business. And for us, aggressive testing with Sandbox by all teams, not just the team that is looking to make a change, is prioritized. Because if we, even something simple, say, for example, one team wants to use AI to standardize job title and function, we have to think about how that's going to affect the rest of the teams, the reports that are built, the processes, the workflows. And that's just a small example of how we might use AI to modify data. But even something that small can have a big impact. If you look at that and how it might affect larger data or potentially things where we're putting information in front of a customer, it really, again, goes back to the foundation of trust. And if you're putting garbage in front of your customer or your prospect, you're going to erode that trust before you even have an opportunity to try to build that relationship. And so that's where, each team having a responsibility for data governance, control, and testing, it has to be a part of our DNA. Because if we're going to ask prospects to trust us with the code of the tools that they're developing to sell to other organizations, we've got to be able to show up right from the beginning with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where ops has been separate, right? In a lot of organizations, marketing ops separate from sales ops, rev ops, CS ops, et cetera. There's usually some sort of council, right? That meets across those teams focused on go-to-market. That becomes only more critical, right? In a world where AI is starting to move across these things, and not just humans, but agents have objectives, right? That they're trying to accomplish across that they can have impact on other teams and, as you say, on customers. So, Jessi, let me ask you, sort of from a kind of global org perspective, kind of how is governance managed? Where's it owned in terms across those different teams, and how does it work?
Yeah, I've been spending a lot of time with our legal teams. I'm actually going to pitch a rotation, maybe like a summer internship or something on our legal team, because I feel like I spend more time with our privacy group than I do other marketers at this point. So for us, governance is typically initiated by IT and legal at an enterprise level. We have to evaluate any new AI technology, whether it's a new vendor or an existing vendor that has new AI capabilities, has to go through those teams to establish any security risks. But for me, it's really kind of a team sport. IT can assess the security risks, but they don't necessarily understand the day-to-day business processes like we do, and they don't know the client journeys and the interconnected technologies that are 1, 2, 3 connections away from where we're initiating this new AI capability. So we really have a shared kind of accountability and an open door policy. So we spend a lot of time batting through ideas. I think Brooke's point about the testing, not just the group who owns the initiative, but kind of everyone involved testing it, because it's easy to get your blinders on your use case and not always necessarily test the bad path. You're always looking for the expected outcome, but I think it's helpful to have those outside perspectives to test other scenarios. So that's how we handle it.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really important point of there's sort of the IT side, right, of really understanding the security issues and governance, et cetera. But there's so much business process knowledge, domain understanding of what's supposed to happen, how that impacts people's jobs and how they operate within the go-to-market teams, how it impacts prospects, customers, partners, et cetera. It really is kind of a team effort, right, to figure out, and as you say, test to make sure that it's really doing what you want it to do. And you're thinking about all those corner cases and things that can go wrong. So, Kacee, yeah, let me ask you next. Sort of how does sort of that governance show up in your go-to-market operations?
Yeah, I mean, it's inherently Drata. Like we are a trust management platform and we have a standard to uphold, including myself and running the marketing ops team. So, I mean, it's something that is top of mind every day, just like Jessi and Brooke had talked about. You're working with legal and security and IT and making sure that you're assessing the risk. And also just making sure that we're tracking the agents that we're deploying across all of these different systems. Brooke, I think you said earlier something around like AI is like everybody's playground. It is. And so having some controls and some guardrails in there to make sure that things are working properly and we're following all of the compliance rules, et cetera. And for us, there's another layer of complexity in terms of like GDPR and EMEA. And so just making sure that we're really mindful about that. And then also just kind of going back to the customer experience, obviously we want to be compliant, but we also want our customers and our prospects to have a positive experience, and emailing somebody who said that they unsubscribed from something, 10 weeks ago is not a positive experience. And so just making sure that we're working diligently across all of our systems as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that last story reminds me of just one of those sort of little mini AI horror stories I heard last week at a conference where they kind of set their scoring model on sort of like web page visits and things like that, and so it turned out their model was starting to spit out all these MQLs that were people unsubscribing from their email. So these people got started MQLing, and it was like, oh no, this is not working the way we intended. So.
Oh no. See, that scares me. Like when we think about like our down market efficiency and trying to source net new accounts, again, making sure that they're going through the right avenues to reach out to these people and they're not finding themselves in marketing nurtures. It's a big deal. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But we're not MQLing unsubscribes.
That's good. That's good. All right. So I wanted to, I'm going to ask, prepare yourselves. I'm going to ask you a little bit for some guidance for the folks who are listening in on kind of, where they should start, they should think about leveraging AI. But first I wanted to share kind of a summary of not just what's in the report, but what we're hearing very consistently from our customers. And again, I've been out on the road a lot, and this stuff is very, very consistent. So everyone is transforming with AI. It has become a requirement and a desire to get AI, to leverage AI in their go-to-market operations and processes, and to do that without getting in the way of growth. So the marketing teams are still needing to drive growth for the organization. And the assumption is you're going to do that without more budget, right? Or you're going to do that without spending a lot more money, because AI should make you more productive, right? And so, but in the process of, as we're moving from this idea of the playground and everybody's testing AI, and companies, I think rightfully said, like, go try things, learn this stuff fast. This is how we're going to need people to be knowledgeable. We're going to need to learn fast. That yes, everybody tried a lot of different things, et cetera, but it really does feel like the pendulum is swinging now to, all right, AI needs to start to produce. It needs to help us sort of move forward, and organizations are at different stages of that. But as it does move into that productive stage, and those requirements become, hey, let's not burn through credits. Let's show how this is helping us be a better organization. It does mean dealing with these more autonomous kinds of use cases. It's more agentic, et cetera. And that's where what we hear very consistently is the data foundation is super important. So having a way to make sure that data stays clean, it's trusted, so that the agent can act on it autonomously. The second is the business process piece. We already talked about the rules basis plus the inference pieces, but the business process of what's supposed to actually happen has to be really clear. And we heard examples from these folks already about the importance of testing across different teams. So business process truth is the second component. And then the third is kind of shared customer context. So it's got to work across different teams to be able to know that, hey, we shouldn't be pushing on trying to upsell this customer right now because there's a severity one, support case going on right now. Or we shouldn't be trying to get them to come to an event, right, at the wrong time, et cetera. So that idea of something that runs across all of the customer-facing teams, it's built on the right data foundation, that has the a solid and documented sense of what is the business process is super important. So we'd love your take on that, and we'll just sort of go down the line here, as well as any guidance you can give to the folks who are trying to emulate what you're doing, or everybody's got great things that they're doing, but how would you recommend they sort of move forward to drive more AI into their go-to-market process? So maybe Jessi, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I would really just start with an honest assessment of the fundamentals. Take a good, hard look at your data quality. If it's not there, hard stop. Look at your routing processes, what consistency already exists, and then identify where people are still relying on manual interventions to make things work, and then really look at where AI can create leverage there. It's not always going to be the most impressive or flashy use cases, but I think that those really help to improve outcomes and reduce friction, will ultimately get organizations going farther, faster. Again, to echo, I think the strong foundations is what's going to help people move faster, and AI is going to amplify what you have there, whether it's good or bad. And so being really thoughtful about where you're starting before throwing it on the fire.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. I think as with all new technologies and new things that you're doing, picking off a meaningful chunk to work on, like test it, make sure it works, get a win that you can show to sort of build trust and confidence for others to kind of invest and allow you to do more. So Kacee, how about you?
Yeah, echoing that, but I think the way that I think about it is kind of actually organizing the work first and grouping it. A lot of people are saying, start with the foundation, and that's absolutely true, but sometimes you don't know how large your foundation is or how narrow it is. And so if you can kind of group the work and the processes that power that, then you can start to assess what your foundation actually is. And throughout that assessment process, you start to figure out where the cracks in your foundation are, so that you know where to make those repairs. So for example, my team now owns the entirety of the prospecting tech stack, and with that is the data enrichment behind it, but we don't own all of the data across the tech stack. And so making sure that we can focus in on those areas and then have really strong partnerships with our data team or with security and legal is kind of the way that I approached it.
So it sounds like what you're saying is there's a risk if you just sort of think of it as data foundation in its entirety, that might be too much, right? And you don't control it all. But in the context of work or a specific task or sub-process, what is the data that's needed, right, by that agent within that process, and focus on that? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And also, I think when people do that, they start to kind of spiral and you get into these rabbit holes of things. I feel like it's really easy as an ops person to do that. So just making sure that you can organize the work, put the people around that work, and then you can actually start to build out what you need to go fix. It just kind of keeps people focused.
Yes, it's probably not too much to say that lives have been lost trying to fix the data, right? When you try to take it all on. So yeah, that totally makes sense. Great. Brooke, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting small is truly the key. The number of data fixes that we have found and implemented as a result of starting small and testing, but being able to catch those early before they're scaled has unlocked a lot of capabilities across all of the teams. And there's the idea certainly of building the plane as you're flying it, but you've got to be able to get it off the ground first. And if you start small with that and find those little key pieces that you can fix before you scale it, you're able to scale then more confidently, more rapidly, and more successfully than if you did try to bite off more than you could chew. It's one of those things too where you start to take those learnings and apply them. I think back to when we were first starting to do account research. You can ask it to go out and do, hey, go research this account, tell me what you need to know. But when you start to put together a brief and create an actual set of guidelines for team members to use for consistency, here's what I want to know. Here's what I want to know about this person. How does this company talk about their own customers or their platform or their tools? How can we take that information and use it to personalize aligning to our ABM strategy. Creating those guardrails and then sharing that and starting with something that is a low risk type of use case for AI lets you start to build some of the skills and confidence to experiment into some of the more big things, because you've learned how to ask Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini in a way that's going to get you the best quality response, and then be able to build on that skill set too at the same time as you're building your data fixes and information to continue to scale. So you're actually building two motions at the same time by starting small.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. And I think we're seeing that as well. And there's almost, I don't know, I haven't seen any great playbooks. We kind of built one on the fly for a conference we did last week, which is kind of like, what is that criteria, right, that you think about to determine where to apply AI, right? And so in some cases, again, because it's fresh, that Uber example, it was, highly repetitive task, high volume, and then you need to think about all the other pieces, like, okay, what's the risk, right? If something goes wrong, is this going to impact our brand? How good is the data? Is the process solid? Because ultimately, these things all need to be framed in some sense of, like, when is this agent going to get triggered? Like, what does the signal or the data change or the human that's going to start that process? What data does it need to operate on? What is its objective, right? And then what does it need to pass back to the next action, whether that's a system action, another agent, or a human? So I think that idea of really grounding in the specific, I think, Kacee, you were talking about that part of the business process, right? That is there, and then dig into the data, the humans, the handoffs, et cetera, around that. Makes a lot of sense. We've got a little bit of time. I'll grab one question off the list here. So, and I'll open this up to anyone here. What systems do you have in place to capture and control, to a certain degree, the types of AI being used by marketers and sales teams, either independently or in the field? Do you guys have AI councils? Is it Wild West? Anybody have any thoughts?
We have an AI working group, so it's primarily sat by our IT and security and privacy teams. So any new AI use cases have to go through that team and through a really rigorous risk assessment, and we evaluate those types of brand risks and other potential opportunities for things to go awry, and the teams do shut those down from time to time. I think the hard part, but also the good part about being such a large organization, is that nobody has access to API keys with ChatGPT and Claude. So we don't have as much rogue kind of actors out there. It is really confined by this AI working group, and we have a strong AI transformation team that's really helping to guide the business and take in these ideas and format them in a way that we can use enterprise-wide. But it does, when you want to move fast, it does make it hard. A lot of hoops to jump through.
Absolutely. Kacee?
Similar, we have a very rigorous procurement process. So anything that's coming through the process is flagged to our AI team. And then if it has anything to do with go-to-market, I'm usually involved with legal and security as well. And so it's just kind of that stopgap. We, not with AI specifically, but we used to be a little bit of the wild, wild west. People were wanting to get tools all the time. And so we had to put some process around that. Yeah, that's definitely something that we keep an eye on, making sure that we're not going rogue with AI.
Yeah, makes sense. Anything to add, Brooke, or do you have something similar?
Similar, we've got the Data Governance Council within our organization and a very, very rigorous review process, especially being in cybersecurity. I think gone are the days of bring your own tech stack. The wild, wild west days have passed.
Yeah, I think that's right. Good. Yeah, well, thank you for hitting that. I also, it just kind of reminds me that, and I've seen this with, again, some of our customers at Rockwell, at Adobe. It's people like you all, right, that are often leading these AI transfer or moving into AI transformation roles, right? And it's sort of maybe not across all IT and across everything in the organization, but across go-to-market, like that understanding of the business process, understanding the data layer, understanding the rules, what's supposed to happen, understanding the context of what marketing is trying to achieve and how they operate, how things get handed off to SDRs, to sales, and then to customer success and beyond, is kind of a rare skill set. And so I think people in your roles and folks who are listening in are in a great seat to be able to kind of move up and evolve and take these AI GTM sort of roles because of that purview and that understanding, because it can't be left to people to experiment, and it has to be people that understand what the business needs, because again, its revenue is at stake and there are a lot of teams involved. So anyway, it does seem like an area where we're seeing more and more people sort of evolve into either being on those AI councils or in some cases leading those AI councils or taking on completely, GTM AI roles. So anyway, with that, I'm so grateful for the three of you. That was really just outstanding. The context you were able to give people and just to bring to life the data, that we got from this report and this survey. I welcome everybody on the webinar to come and download the report. Also, you're welcome to shoot me notes on LinkedIn or whatever. If you have questions, even for the panel, I can help kind of pass those along as well. So again, thank you all for joining us today. And thanks again to this great panel for sharing all your wisdom and experience. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.